in 2020, obviously, there was a lot of online broadcasts as well. You know, we were doing like Road to Rio. I remember Road to Rio was the first studio broadcast that we did in this like COVID, what was the like COVID times, I guess. I don't know.
Yep.
And then we obviously were doing like season 10 of ANZ Champs, season 11 of ANZ Champs. Some of those were like online, and we did like ESL 1 Cologne. We did DreamHack Open Summer and Winter. We did ESL Pro League season 12 B Stream. We did IEM Beijing. We did a lot of this. And a lot of those were like online or were remote from like another country. So we were doing, as just like obviously Cologne, that was like overnighters and stuff like that. So I want to talk to you about like the challenges and the difficulties and like the mental aspects of like doing all of that. And did that sort of affect you at all? Because I know for like myself, I found that it wasn't too bad because I was like shifting my sleep properly.
Yeah.
But what was your experience like with doing that, all those online overnighter stuff like that kind of situations?
That was when TriCasts became a thing.
Yep.
So that was just like a new world for us.
Yeah.
As like you, me, Pilly. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed that, like just trying to find the dynamic. And then it also made it more fun because it wasn't just like about the Counter Strike. Like it'd be about the Counter Strike when it needed to be, but we'd also be able to like have fun. I think that's also when we sort of figured out the formula of like you being able to just egg me on to do something dumb, and I'd happily do something dumb, whether it was like while the game was live or while we were on camera. So there was a lot of evolution through that time. And even though like I remember like all the domestic Asian and Oceanic tourneys, like for the Beijings or for the Road to Rios and stuff, were like the same 4 teams or like a couple of slightly different teams every now and then. The games would always be so interesting. Like I remember when we watched Asian CS, we'd watch Vici, Tyloo, however many times we watched that. And there was like that one game, I think that was was that in the Beijing qual or the Road to Rio?
Which one are you talking about? The MP7 buy?
MP7 buy.
Yeah, I can't remember which qualifier that was. I just remember Vici being up 2-0.
Yep.
This was after, by the way, they'd lost like 10 series in a row to Tyloo, and we're like, finally, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
They're finally going to win. And then they're up 2-0. They're up like 14-13 or 14-10 or something like that.
Yeah, something
it's
like
quite close on Vertigo. And then MP7 misbuy from Tyloo on the T side. And we're like, no, they've won. Like, there's no way they'd lose this now from here.
I think they paused to get a Matchmatic.
Yeah, they tried to
match
Matchmatic.
like, no, you can't Matchmatic misbuys.
Yeah, because we remember we interviewed Jack, the manager of Tyloo, after that series. We asked him.
Yeah.
I remember I was looking back at the footage again, and I was like, yeah, we were saying, was it a misbuy? And he was like, yeah, we didn't want to buy it, but they wouldn't let us like sell it.
Yeah.
So had to go, and then they won that round, obviously, and then they reverse sweep the series. So I just don't know. Anyway. Yeah, we had fun. I liked the TriCast situation as well. I thought that was really good. I don't know about you, but I think actually some of those broadcasts are like actually some of the best casts we've done.
Yeah,
as a trio.
That's the thing. Like,
not necessarily specifically just the TriCasting aspect, but just the broadcast as a whole.
Yeah, as a broadcast, it was good. I think, like, that was the year I got really sad that IEM got canned too, because we'd done so much and we got so much, like, even with the Colognes we were doing, right? B-Stream, we get to not only speak to some of the best players when, like, we'd do the winners' interviews, but we'd get to cast, like, some of the best games. I remember there being some observing issues. That's something that definitely sticks out, which made it pretty hard to cast games that deserved good cast. But, like, being able to cast, like, some of the best teams in the world, like Euro teams up against Euro teams, playing for Cologne, even though it is online, like, they'd still be going pretty all out.
It's better than what you normally would get to cast.
Exactly. Yeah. And just doing all that, getting to do better casts makes you feel better about yourself, also helps you improve. And then leading into IEM 2020, I was hoping there'd be I was just like, cool, like we got on 2019, surely we'll be on 2020 if that comes around, right?
Yeah. Or you'd be in the discussion.
And I'm like, I feel ready now. Yep. So there was a lot of years of feeling ready to like do that arena cast, because I never actually got to do a arena cast until DreamHack, which was 2022.
Which was the same for Pilly as well. Pilly did one, but he was, so actually it was a bit of a different situation for him. He did one at IEM Sydney, but if you remember, he was like sick. He had that laryngitis or whatever, and he couldn't, he said he couldn't properly do it. He didn't do it justice, essentially, in his mind. And so being able to do DreamHack was like an actual proper first go at an arena. That's why I'm thinking in my head that was like the first time that he did it. But yeah, actually it was a second, but semantics, I guess.
That was also the other thing off that was, as you mentioned, like learning to flip our sleeping patterns ahead of time.
Yeah.
To do the overnighters just to feel a bit better. That first pro league stint we did for the 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like where we didn't. I don't know if we flipped ahead of time or not. You did?
I don't know if I flipped too
I think
far
it might
ahead
have
of
only
time.
been like a couple of days.
But I was like proper sleeping during the day for like 4 weeks.
Yeah, and Pilly had come in like, oh, I've got an assignment. Or
Yeah.
I've got an exam.
A tutorial
After
in the morning
we finish.
or something.
Yeah, and he'd just be ruining himself. I'm like, bro, how? And he'd still come in and do a decent job.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that experience. I just remember like the days I'd have a shit sleep, you'd come in and be like, oh, I feel great. And somehow like one of us would
was
always
feeling
feel
okay.
good, whereas the other one would feel bad, and we'd still fucking be able to
I
push
remember
through.
it being like almost the perfect storm of circumstances to provide a cooked but funny but like good broadcast. Like we were all like we were okay in terms of like being able to show up and being able to be awake on the show and stuff like that. It wasn't like we were like falling asleep on the show or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like the fact that it was overnight, the fact that it was like we were just in this like it did feel like you were in a hyperbolic time chamber where nothing else existed in your life apart from those shows.
Yeah.
You would go to sleep all day, wake up. It would be like I remember waking up at like 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. at night or something like that. And then, you know, you would come into the office at like 2 a.m. because we'd do these broadcasts from like, I think it would be like 3 a.m. to like 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you drive home, obviously, and go to sleep. So it's like, you literally couldn't do anything else anyway. And we were even on our days off because we were doing like 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
We were like playing World of Tanks overnight.
True, yeah.
Every night that we were not working, you know? So
Yeah.
you were not doing anything else in your life at all apart from just this Counter Strike show.
Yeah.
And it just, for some reason, it like put us in this frame of mind where we just did the randomest shit. It was a B stream.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to keep it fun, keep it entertaining. It was I thought it was fun. I thought it was really entertaining.
It helped us. I think that was also when you got released.
Yeah, that was I had
About halfway through that year, right?
yeah, so September was when I left ESL and that was like my final month or two that I knew I was leaving. I knew I was gone, but I was still getting paid a salary.
Yeah.
So I did get a little bit scammed there because, like, you know, day rates for 4 weeks worth of 4 days a week or 5 days a week worth of work is probably more than your salary. But anyway, that was like the last.
That was when the
hurrah.
rate keeper got released.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And things changed for the better for talent, I'd say.
The rate keeper. I've never heard that one before.
I came up with it.
Well, you see what happened was I thought to myself, fuck, these rates are pretty shit.
Yep.
I don't want to.
You're like, I'm freelance now. I don't want to work for this.
No,
right, boys, I'm putting a foot down.
I'm going to fucking put my foot down a little bit here and say this is not acceptable. Which, to be fair, everyone could have done beforehand, but no one did. So anyway,
true. Actually, no, one person did, and
that's right.
Then they didn't work with us anymore.
Yeah, so there was a little bit more involved in that, but that's for a different in retrospect, I think.
Yeah. The other thing that happened this year is off the back of being on like crazy overnight schedules, my sleeping pattern was cooked.
Yeah,
I think that's when I got Pico. You would have got Nox around the same time.
Yeah.
And having a puppy that I think COVID was the best time to get a dog, especially if one of you in your like
relationship
is on a cooked sleeping pattern. Because Pico would just like wake up and like piss on the bed, or like wake up and vomit and like or just shit somewhere, you know, like, and it was fucked. And at least I'd be on like
Nox did the same.
Yeah, I'd be in between work, right? So, and that was the other thing. My work, like, COVID killed my video stuff because anything freelance I was getting, like, no one really needed it. No one was doing marketing video, which is like the main sort of thing that I was doing, right? Like, no point. Everyone was saving money, so. That's when esports skyrocketed as like my main career as well. It wasn't just like the secondary thing, the thing that was like alongside my main video thing. It was like, all right, I'm a caster now.
There was a lot of casting work actually for us that year compared to other years because we were getting a lot of the B stream stuff because the AU office was the only one that really could actually do those broadcasts. So yeah, I mean, it was good. It was definitely good in that respect. We got lots and lots of reps. I felt like we got better. I feel like this is the point where yourself, myself, and Pilly kind of, I don't know how to describe the, not relationship that we have, but like the work relationship that we have. Like, because I think prior to that, obviously we were all duos, but like no one really knew. Like I felt like Pilly and I were like a fairly established duo, but then like you were with Rob for a bit and then you were with Kev for a bit and then you were like kind of on your own a little bit.
It was also with
and then,
like gym at Gfinity, and then
so it was a bit
back
like
with
weird
gym for a little bit,
but
then,
that's
not with gym.
I feel like that was the point where we went from being like, okay, Pilly and I are a duo, to it being like, oh, we're a trio.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't like specifically like, oh, we're gonna be a trio, we're gonna do this as a 3-man, but like I've always felt like since that point it's like you, myself, and Pilly have been like the 3.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, as sad as to say for Jim, like he's kind of on the side a little bit.
But the same
sometimes.
with like Kev too, right? Like
and Kev, when he would come in,
he'd come in for a trio cast every now and then, and he wouldn't like it.
Yeah,
like he wouldn't vibe.
It didn't work.
He's like, where do I talk?
Yeah,
it's like, but you don't need to be technical about it, Kev. You just need to fucking relax.
Yeah.
You know,
it's hard.
Just chill out, bro, and just talk when you wanna.
Yeah.
You know, that's like the
Anyway, so I don't know. I still kind of to this day feel like whenever I'm on a broadcast with you and Pilly, that is when it's easiest for me as a caster to do what I do, or as a host or whatever. I just think there's like something there that was built in that year that works, and that's what I have in my head. But
also, while we were talking about that as well, something popped up in my head. You know how I did the bit with the office bit over at EPL?
Yeah.
So where Machine couldn't remember my name is like the bit.
Okay.
But there's
yeah.
multiple times maybe.
Yeah.
I remember one specifically when we did an EPL cross one of the mornings. It was like, here's Elfishguy and friend. And I was,
I've had the exact same thing when I was doing the first year the Pilly cast IEM Sydney when we were doing the arena show. Stunner called out, mate. He's on the desk and he's throwing to us and he goes, and we're going to go over to our casters, Elfishguy and my man.
Was that me too?
No, Pilly.
Was it Pilly? Yeah.
Pilly, and I'm like, I'm here with Pilski. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I felt so bad for him. But like, obviously it's bad on both sides because like he would have known who Pilly was. He knew his name and whatever. But like, you just mental blank in these kinds of situations sometimes. Like, if you would ask me sometimes, like, which 5 players were on this team, like, I could probably tell you 4 out of the 5. But for some fucking reason, I'll just forget the 5th player. Yeah. It's not because I don't know who that player is.
It's
just
blank.
You're blank.
Yeah.
Same thing happens when you're hosting. And I think that's probably what happened to him. And he just knew... He knew who I was because he'd worked with me before and stuff like that. I'd been around a little bit longer. And Pilly, this was like his first time on a big international show. Sort of thing.
Yeah.
My man.
And my man.
Like, fuck, man. That must suck.
Sometimes
for him, and it would suck for
you even
Pilly.
say it because you forget. It's like, and my man.
My man.
And you try to...
My man, Pilly. Like, you're thinking, you're trying to spend time thinking.
And then you just don't get it.
You don't get it. Yeah. Same thing happens to me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I do it with teams sometimes.
Yep.
But you can turn it into a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to go find that clip now and then like quote tweet the office thing. I was like, this isn't even the first time it's happened, you know?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, anyway.
Yep. It happens more than you think. You kind of just got to blow it off.
Yeah.
Hi, Knox.
I think if you want to jump back, I don't know if you want to talk about getting robbed twice in the same year in 2019. That was fucking dope.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a little bit more of a personal life thing, right?
Yeah, but yeah.
What was the second time? The first time was New Zealand.
No, the second time was New Zealand.
What was the first time?
First time was all of Jess's shit getting
stuff.
stolen before we moved to the new place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was great. And then also using my over the top attention to detail is the political correct way to do it.
Right.
Looking at different photos and linking them up with
Sussing it out.
Yeah.
Did you ever get any of that stuff back?
Most of it.
Oh,
but
really?
just not like any of the Nintendo or Game Boys and all that stuff, which is the stuff that hurts the most for Jess. So like when we like walk into Game Traders and I'll see how much like brand new boxed up like Pokemon games sell for now.
Yeah.
And Jess is like, I don't want to know. Like she fucking still hurts her. She got all of the comics back. There was also Jess collects like figurines or used to collect figurines before she got into books. And one of them was like a super special
What
Batman
they call,
one.
Pop vinyls or
Nah,
something?
not the pops. She had a couple of pops, which is what helped us get it back because they were like inexpensive shit.
Yeah.
But like one of them was like this red mask Batman or something or some special Batman. And it got sold off to some dude for $5 when it was worth like a couple of $100. Like, and the dude who would have bought it might have known that.
Yeah.
Being like, oh, what an idiot. But it was like stolen goods and there was no way to get that back. So there was no way to like do it. But yeah, like I managed to track, like, I think Inna managed to get onto it and pretend she was like someone else and like got the street address. Once she got the street address, I like found, because all the photos that were up of like the stuff that was selling on Facebook Marketplace were like, had like things like architectural things, right? And one of them was like a reddish driveway, reddish brick on the driveway. So I looked on the street, there was 2 houses with that brick. And then I found like different photos that this chick had been tagged in of like their parties and found different like angles of their place. Found this like crack in the driveway. And there was like that same crack was in the photo that they took with some of the comics.
Yep.
And I was like, look, it's the same fucking crack. There's no world where this lines up anywhere else. And I had to send that to the police. I was doing all this detective work, calling the police like 3 or 4 times a day. Like, you need to go and fucking get this shit.
Yeah.
I've done all the work for you. It is these guys, like, and they're like, well, you can go back and buy it yourself. Like, that's the best way so it doesn't get like sold. And I'm like, well, you know, like,
why would I?
And then the constable that opened the report or whatever was like, oh, they're not back on till Thursday next week. And I'm like, well, it's all going to be fucking sold or dumped by then. Like, can we just do something about this? And
so what did they want you to do? They want you to go and buy it. And
that was their suggestion.
Then you somehow get the money back.
Or like you go and confront them, but it's like they're like the guys that are involved there, like looking at the photos, like might be like gang member dudes. Like, so it was
vigilante
justice. They're already stealing shit, so they're already probably like involved in like bad stuff. There was like, you know, there was some like druggish shit going on in like some of the photos too. So I was like, you know, you don't want to turn up. They could have knives. They could have guns. You could be in trouble. You could put yourself in danger if you like go over there.
Yeah, of course. I don't know why they would recommend that as a solution.
Yeah, but just like go and buy it was anyway. So some of the stuff got lost. Some of the stuff like got I don't know. But the chick, I don't know if she was like, because she was saying, oh, like, this is some of my friend's stuff's getting sold, he's moving or something. So I don't know if she was actually told that as a lie.
Maybe.
And then she had to cop the rap because there's no actual evidence that she stole it.
She was the one,
Yeah, and her boyfriend looked like a bit of a douchebag. So, anyway, that whole thing, got most of it back eventually, but I had to call the cops. I had to harass the cops to do this fucking job, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's peanuts for them, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm like, you have this thing. It is right there. You can like get someone that is doing something wrong and help someone rather than like whatever else is going on. And all you have to do is go and knock on this door, say this, and like, it's not that easy. You need all this legal shit. And I just gave them everything I had, like all the conversations they'd had. Like, I think the thing was we needed receipts for stuff that was in the photos to prove that they were like actually ours.
Who's keeping the receipts?
But I was like, I found like clips from my stream where I had some of the stuff in the background on my bookcase or on like a shelf. And I was like, look, this exists. This is like a really fucking rare thing. This key ring that they were selling is something that Jess could only get like when she went to the US at this specific point in time, or like in Korea in this specific year for the specific release of this specific thing. There's only like 100 of these in the world. What is the chances that this person was also there at the same time and selling it right now? Like, and that got stolen.
Yeah.
So there was just like little things like that, and they just had to be like, well, yeah, I guess so. And then eventually went and did it. So there was that. And then also the second time we got robbed was on the last day we were supposed to be in New Zealand.
Yep.
And it was just stuff left in the van, even though we like pulled the curtains and like, you know, no one should see into it. What we found out later is like vans that are like true, like what are they called? Tourist vans with like the mattresses and stuff that have like any signage on them to show that they're like a tourist van.
Yep.
Like heavy targets
for sure.
People to steal.
People leave their bags in them all the time and stuff like that. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it was weird because they didn't take my passport or my wallet or the Switch, which was all in like the front glove box.
Right.
Like, but they just grabbed the bags. They took my whole bag and it was just a bunch of dirty clothes because it was the end of the trip.
Right.
And they like opened Jess's bag and stole some stuff. So they must have just like smashed,
grabbed,
to
go quickly as possible.
Jumped in a car, went back out the front. Don't even know when it happened. Asked people if they in the street, did you see this happen? Nah, no idea. But yeah, it was a terrible time. Jess got a passport stolen and we had to stay in New Zealand for... Technically, we didn't have to stay in New Zealand for that weekend, but it was on Friday afternoon at like 6 p.m. New Zealand time or something, and like the local embassy was closed, and then the embassy in Australia like wasn't fucking picking up.
Yeah.
And no one could tell us what to do.
Yeah.
So we just had no idea. So we just had to stay.
Yep.
Had to call our flights and try to get our flights rescheduled or whatever.
Fuck that.
And we managed to get that done. We're like, no, we got our shit robbed. We can't go home yet. Blah, blah, blah. And we tried to... I think we had a rough idea of where it had gone because Jess's laptop got stolen and she had like the track your laptop and it was just somewhere randomly in the middle of fucking Auckland.
Yeah.
So we couldn't find it
anywhere really.
Yeah. That's it. It's just we couldn't figure it out. And my like camera and all my camera gear got stolen too because it was which was like before my nan passed away. Like one of her last presents to me was like helping buy like that while I was at uni to help me with like my photography and video.
Yeah.
And so I like didn't use it. I just had it as like a keepsake. But Jess started to get into photography and started using it.
Yeah.
And I told her, hey, like this is really special to me. It's like the last thing Nan bought me. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. I'll look after it.
Yeah.
But then I don't think it ever sunk in. And it was only after it got robbed. And I'm like, that was like
the last
my thing fucking from Nan.
Yeah.
So like I'm pretty angry. And
Yeah.
then she's like, oh, you never told me. And I'm like, no, I fucking did.
I think you're a pretty sentimental guy, like just
I
in
am.
general.
Yeah.
These kinds of things are.
But when shit like that happens, it's like, what can you do? So it's just.
What can you do? Yeah, nothing. What can you do? You just have
Yeah.
to move on, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then that was all right. Ended up having like another couple of days in Auckland.
Yeah.
Like we chilled as much as we could, went and got Jess an emergency passport and then came back. And then, it was only afterwards where we found out like, you don't need a passport to travel between like New Zealand and Australia, especially if it's like,
I didn't know
if
that.
you're coming back to Australia because of whatever went wrong.
Yep.
I still kind of wanted to be there anyway in case the cops like found something and like we could go get it. And we had like the PIN numbers on the laptops or whatever they're called, the ID numbers. And the laptop actually like turned up, whatever the serial number. That's what I'm thinking of. The serial number for it, and the laptop ended up turning up. Was it last year or something? And I think we just gave it to Dan, or we told Dan to go get it because like it was an older Surface, so it was like whatever. And the camera never turned up, so who knows?
Yeah, that's strange because the cameras as well have serial numbers and stuff like that. And
I don't think I ever like wrote it down. I think I wrote it down somewhere.
I remember there was I know this is a big tangent, but I remember seeing a story that someone's camera got stolen and then they were like looking at photos and they saw like, how there's like a unique identifier on photos, like you can put in your details or something like that. They saw on the photo that it was like, I don't know whether it was like copyright to them or something, like you can put on your camera when you take the photo, it says on the file, this photo was taken by this
name and stuff.
And that photo had their name on it. They're like, that's my camera. That person has my camera, whoever took this photo. So anyway, they figured out and then they eventually got their camera back because of that, because that photo was posted online. It's just funny. But
Digital
yes, surprising.
fingerprints.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if they really wanted to find these kinds of things, I'm sure they could find it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like, is it really worth it for how much? $4,000 camera?
Yeah.
Well, that was more than that to you, but like it's not to
the sentimental value was gone.
Yeah.
And it was like a 5D Mark III, so it was
it's a pretty good camera.
It was a pretty good camera, but it was pretty old at that point.
Yeah.
Like I was 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
But then because I had camera insurance, like at least we had insurances. We had travel insurance, never got anything back because they just kept asking for shit. And I was just like, why are you asking for this stuff? You don't even need these things you're asking for. Like you have the police report.
Yep.
You have as many of the receipts as we have of our clothes and all of this shit, which ended up not being that much. We just wanted the fucking money back for flights. The thing was, I think it was it Dex? Dex might have started the GoFundMe to help me because like we fucking got robbed. Like don't know what the fuck's going on. Not necessarily in a good place financially either. Like in an okay place, but like that's big hit to the money. So everyone helped out in the GoFundMe. Like I did a replace Jess's shit fund as well after the other time we got robbed, and a lot of people donated a lot of money for that just to try to I was like, hey, do you want to like try to find the Game Boys and stuff? And Jess didn't, so we just sort of like used it on other stuff for her to try to make her feel better because I was like, well, what do I do? I can't do anything more than like literally scavenging photos and finding cracks that are identical and getting the police on them as fast as possible. But yeah, photo insurance, whoever I was with, I think it was AON, which is like through Allianz, was great. But Budget Direct, fuck them, never using them again.
All right.
Yep.
Facts. There you go.
There you go. Don't use them for travel insurance. Don't do it.
Well, I think we can move on from 2020 then and move into 2021. And since we're on the topic of real life, personal things, obviously something pretty unfortunate happened to you and your family in 2021. We'll talk about your brother.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, Mac's brother passed away in 2021, which was quite a big thing for you and for actually quite a lot of people, I think, involved in your life. But I just wanted to talk to you briefly about what that meant to you in terms of like how's that changed your outlook on life, or did it? Because I feel like prior to that you were kind of quite happy-go-lucky. You sort of went through life, didn't really get too concerned about things and stuff like that. But after that point, you seemed to like really take everything. You didn't take anything for granted.
Yeah.
Almost. That seemed like the change in you. So was that something that actually happened? Like, did you look at life a little bit differently afterwards?
Yeah, I just want to get shit done more,
Yeah.
Like, life just seems that much more precious after shit like that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I, I heavily care about other people's mental more these days, which is probably why you also, if you listen to broadcast, I'll probably end up talking about that as well. Like all these things that are external to the game because they fucking matter. And some people are like, oh, I don't know if it matters. And I'm like, bro, like it matters. I think I've always had like a brain where I'm thinking like, people's physical life, people's mental life, like all these things definitely affect their gameplay. And like if something's just a little bit off, it can completely throw a player's gameplay off. But even just like mental in general, like everyone around us, I think did a really good stint with Movember that year.
Yeah.
Just to try to like
$10,000, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was over 10K.
Yeah.
Just over 10K. So that was a real good one. Did one last year as well. Last year's one was a bit split because I did an Are You OK Day for like a week, but that week was at I think it was like the last week of October, and I raised like 2 to 3K, maybe a little bit more in that week for Are You OK Day. But then did Movember straight off the back of it, and because a lot of people had already donated into Are You OK Day, then the Movember seemed like super slow in comparison. So I'm trying to because there's Are You OK Day, I think it's next week now, but then that'll leave another month before Movember.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out, do I want to...
One or the other?
One or the other.
Yeah.
Like the Are You OK Day week thing is like this, what's it called? Step for a change or something like that.
Yeah, sounds right.
You just have to give yourself a goal of like kilometers to walk or do whatever. Run in the week, and just try to hit that. So I'm thinking I might just do it. That's a bit more of a low key thing, and then go harder on the Movember.
You did like 100 kilometers in a week, right? For that
it was. I said 100 Ks in the week, but what I ended up doing was supplementing actually running because my feet got so fucking sore. I didn't have running shoes. I didn't have like the right stuff.
Yeah.
So I started to do biking and then doing a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1. So I'd have to ride 4 times as far as
40 Ks for 10 Ks or something.
Yeah. And did a lot of that. So hit the 100 Ks and felt like the best I'd felt cardiovascularly in a long time.
I think the Movember works for you specifically, obviously, just because you have a mustache, generally speaking. So it's quite easy to tie that into who you are.
Yeah, I think for Movember in particular, it was I started doing it as just I've always done it since 2011 or 2012 when I could actually grow decent enough facial hair to be oh, here's a half-assed mustache.
Yeah.
But then it got to a point, especially in esports, I think it was around, I think it would have been 2019, where I think I did Movember, or even it might have been 2018 actually. I did Movember on Gfinity. That was when I don't know if you did it as well.
I did Movember. I've done Movember every year, but I don't know if we did it together or if it was just, I don't know. I can't remember.
I just remember having it in 2018, and that would have been the same month where we went up to Supernova. And then all of the photos were with a moustache. And then after I shaved it again, I was really fucking don't like what I look like without a moustache in comparison to what I look like with a moustache. So I was well, I'll just keep it.
You'll just be a mustache guy.
I'll just be the mustache guy.
Yeah.
And I kept it. And part of that was also why does Movember have to be the only time the moustache means support men's health, prostate awareness, bloody
everything,
mental health awareness, all the good stuff. So I'll just use it all the time, just have it all the time. People, I'll just be I do Movember and shit. Do all this stuff if people ask. No one really asks about the moustache anymore. I think
it's just
sort of used to it. Yeah. People ask about keeping it and what do you do with it and stuff, and how do you eat with it being so long, which is also an issue.
I have that problem. When I grow my mustache, I'm fuck, I can't.
Yeah,
it gets itchy, or I get food in it, or I don't know, whatever. It just.
But I
don't know.
It's one of those things. The other thing, off the back of that, of course, is I feel for Simon, I need to live twice as hard because he had a lot of potential as an individual.
Yeah.
So I feel that was lost, and give me a sec.
You just gotta run it for him, almost, in a way.
Just do it for him because he fucking didn't get to live properly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, right? And to be fair, I actually do. I know we've never really spoken about this like one-on-one or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not someone that's ever had these kinds of struggles in my life personally, so I can't like relate on that level. But I think the way that you go about life is pretty admirable in that sense, if that makes sense. Like, it seems to me like you're living the life that you live your best life.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
I try to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't let any opportunity sort of go astray these days.
Yeah.
Like, every time I do get an opportunity, I try and fucking do the best job. Try to make sure everyone around me is doing the best job. So the show or whatever we're working on, whatever we're doing, just feels like the best thing, like the best representation of what we could be doing, given all the circumstances and shit available. Also, you know, like, I think the other thing as well is like I think I try to be empathetic a lot of the time with people, but it's always really hard for me unless I've actually experienced it to truly be empathetic
100%.
and shit.
Yeah, I get that.
And it's fucking like, yeah, death is just this thing that's absolutely crazy. Like, even the other day, I think I said in one of our group chats, I was crying watching whatever show.
Yeah.
Any show I watch now where there is like someone that's passed away, as soon as someone passes away, I just start crying.
Yeah.
Like, there's just this thing inside you that you're just like,
Yeah.
fuck. Like, I remember that feeling. And it just like,
I
hits
get
you.
that.
Yeah.
I get that. And like, the closest person to me that's passed away is like my grandparents.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I mean, that's not nice at all, but it's definitely not as bad as like someone that's your immediate family.
Yeah.
But I see that in movies sometimes nowadays. I think it's just because we're getting older and more mature and thinking about mortality and this kind of thing a lot more.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where like you see something and you're like, fuck, like here comes the waterworks.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't ever get to the point where I'm like crying, but I'm like, I could cry if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's a bad thing, but
yeah, I'm definitely like way more emotional. Like, I've always been a relatively emotional person.
Yeah.
Even like when I was a kid, I'd cry at like fucking nothing. Like, I'd scrape my fucking knee or something would happen. I'd just start crying. Like, I'd cry all the time.
Yeah.
And I was just, generally a little bitch. That's just, you know.
I've always tried to suppress my emotions. I know that's a toxic masculinity type thing.
Yeah.
But I don't cry in movies. I try not to cry when I'm in pain or when I'm sad or like this kind of thing.
Yeah. I was definitely a lot like that, but that's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Like, that's definitely changed a lot. I tried to not suppress emotions after like a certain amount of years. I think Jess and I like have helped each other heaps. I know Jess definitely suppresses her emotions. She like didn't cry for ages when Simon passed, and then there was just like a random day where she like cried.
Yeah.
And it's just like, those things, like, people do things at their own pace. I remember like when it happened as well, like there's multiple steps of like what were the hardest things I'll probably ever have to do in my life.
Yeah.
And one of them is like fucking calling your dad when you found your brother passed away.
Yep.
And telling him that that's happened.
Yeah, that
like
would
that's
been...
and hearing him like fucking 2 hours away, like on the phone, just start breaking down. Like, that's something I'll never fucking forget, bro.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh, that, and then the fucking eulogy. You were there for that.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up and say like, what was that like? Because I think, you know, and it's maybe it takes away some of the impact of that by like relating it to your job and stuff like that. But I think in a sense it's, when I watched you doing that, I was like, if he can do that, you're going to be able to do anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's going to be harder than standing up in front of a crowd at an IEM or, you know, whatever, and doing whatever you need to do. Like, it almost made me think, okay, well, whatever the fuck we do, even though we put so much, what's the word? Like, importance on our job and doing the show and stuff like that, it's like, you know, in the grand scheme of things, like, it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Like, we're just talking. So I think if you can do that, things like IEM Sydney in front of an arena or whatever,
even like
makes that easier.
Just
not easier,
being able to not take yourself so seriously as well. Like, when you've been through something at that level of seriousness, and then bringing that back to work. like I've always been able to like be the crux of a joke, like even
butt of a
before
joke,
all
yeah.
that stuff, like that sort of happened and stuff, right? Like I've always been able to just make a bit of a dick of myself and not feel too embarrassed. Like it's even easier for me to like make more of a dick of myself without being even more embarrassed. Like
Yep.
over at fucking Pro League, I took my shit off, jumped into the ocean in budgie smugglers,
Yeah.
like something I
Mr. Universe style.
yeah, in front of however many people. I think like 20k people watching when that one went live.
Yeah.
And it still now lives as a content piece. So it's
Yeah.
just fucking, that is what it is. But yeah, that was definitely one of the fucking, it definitely shaped me a lot
Yeah.
as a person. So opened me up to being more emotional. Just, yeah, made me want to live for more of a reason, and then like try to just go the right direction in my career and shit, and be like, I'm not getting any fucking younger. Got to
It's
sort of
true.
make shit happen sooner rather than later.
It's going in the right direction,
Yeah.
I think. And if we continue on the timeline then as well, the one thing that I wanted to sort of bring up tangentially to that topic is Josh A dropping the nuke on AUCS, right? And obviously it doesn't tie in necessarily, but the reason I bring it up now is because you were specifically name dropped in this document,
Delusional document.
whatever he wanted to call it.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know what the nuke was, he was a caster, up and coming caster, I suppose, tier 2 caster, let's just say, in ANZ, that was not happy with his station, so to speak, and more or less wrote a document, a manifesto of what his perceived slights were with the people at the top, which was obviously yourself, myself, Jim, Pili, Karath, Conky,
Dion?
Komodo.
Yeah.
He said Conky was an all right guy, so credit for that one, I guess. But yeah, he really had a bit of a spray at Komodo. And there was only like there was only 3 people that were actually name dropped. Like, he didn't name drop me. I wasn't name dropped, which of anyone, let's be real, it probably should have been me that got name dropped.
Especially with the Ivory Tower.
Because I was the one that was scheduling people on casts when I was at ESL. Although at that time, I think I was no longer with ESL.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a moot point. And just for context, anyone that thinks that we have any say over who gets hired for things at ESL is delusional. We actually do not at this point, especially at this point. Back then, yeah. Back maybe when I was at ESL, yeah, definitely. I would have had some say. But now, like, I don't know if I'm working IEM Sydney. I don't know if I'm working DreamHack Melbourne. I don't know if I'm doing ANZ Champs. There is no ANZ Champs next season. You know, I don't know any of this shit until it's told to me. I don't choose who's on these shows.
But you can do your best to try and change that, you know? Like, that's the thing that I've learned is networking is fucking so important. And reaching out and talking to the right people and getting in people's ears, letting them know you're actually interested in doing these things, which you think is a given. It's like, yeah, everyone wants to work it, but it's not. It's like you need to reach out and say, hey, I want to
make it happen.
do this stuff. I want to actually make this happen.
Well, I mean, the point of bringing it up in that sense was, again, like you said, you specifically got you got name dropped, and he said basically that you were only around for the memes.
Yeah, but I was also the freshest.
You were the newest, and debatably,
ESL
you were the one that was the most in sync with the scene because you were playing.
I think it was
FPL and stuff like that.
First time I actually made FPL was end of 2019. I think that's when Panic was still around and admin, which was probably like when it was the best because Panic was like the kind of guy that didn't really take shit and knew what was good, what wasn't good, and you know who needed to go, who could stay, and stuff like that. And that's like I got removed after a couple of months because I wasn't performing and wasn't really helping.
You weren't good enough,
But then I like made it again, and I feel like you know the more you make it, like I'm definitely like a never back down kind of guy. I'm not like I made FPL, you know, can't play it or I'm gonna get kicked. Like that's just a fucking bitch mentality. Like
for sure,
you're gonna ruin everything else if you don't play. Like just do it for the title. That's not cool. I don't like that. But yeah, the name drop in particular was just like, I read that and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, it didn't faze me a lot. Like, it pissed me off a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was more just how uninformed the take was. And then I think I did a stream for three hours.
I tried to find clips from it. I couldn't see them.
Yeah, well, it probably just doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if anyone actually clipped anything.
Yeah, maybe not.
But yeah, I just sort of went through how the process of working behind the scenes works and how different it is from just being a fucking ESEA online caster and just saying, hey, I'm better than this. Hey, I deserve this. Why didn't I get this shot? And it's like, bro, you live in Brisbane, you know, you're not near the studio.
Yeah.
You don't know the first thing about studio work. Like, being on camera is different. Even things like, I think I went into like talking about like when Conky came over to a couple of these studio things for the first time and how he was like a fucking robot doing like, yes, like this stuff. And I had to like DM him and be like, bro, you need to loosen up. Like, move your shoulders like a normal person.
I do remember that.
Just like, yeah, just stuff like that. I'm like, you need to just
didn't
like,
move his body at all.
relax.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so many things that go into like being a talent on camera, just being on camera. Whereas if you're in your head and you're just like, oh, I just need to talk about Counter Strike, you're not going to do a good job because you're not just going to be yourself or let you be a personality, right? You're just going to be a fucking CS:GO robot. So maybe that's why he thought it was just me for the memes. But in my head, like when we're on camera, right? If the CS isn't good, I don't really want to talk about the CS. And I feel like people probably don't want to hear about the CS. Maybe he was different because I think he might have been with. Was he with like PC 419 or something at some point? So he probably wanted to have everything, every single little stat broken down because he wanted to hear about like how his teams went, shit like that.
Yeah.
So different strokes for different folks or whatever, but yeah, is what it is.
Yeah, I read that doc yesterday.
Yeah.
Just because I was researching for this and I was just like, oh, fucking hell. I wish I never interacted with it. And that's always kind of been my policy when there's been like drama or anything like that. I've not interacted with it. I don't like any of the tweets. I don't reply to any of the tweets. I don't retweet. I don't quote.
Yeah.
I almost wish I had said something at the time though, but I don't know. I think where I'm at, I've always stayed away from the drama as much as possible.
Yeah. I think I might have. I don't think I said anything on it. I think I
you did the stream,
I did the
but you
stream.
didn't like tweet about it or anything like that. I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, my personal philosophy has always been to like just ignore it, especially if it involves you, and eventually like it will go away. If it's something like that, it's a couple of days, it does just disappears. Obviously, if it's something pretty bad, but like I'm not ever been involved in anything pretty bad. You know what I mean? This is the worst. I mean, this is probably the biggest, like most interaction, impression, drama, something that I've really ever been involved in. And when you look back at it in hindsight, and like now 2 or 3 years later, you go, this was just such a meme. You know, I wish I would have farmed the impressions or, because like now I'm doing content and stuff. I'll make a video about that shit. Like I'll be like, fuck, I'm going to break this down.
Like, I think even if that one, like it'd just be impressions, right? It wouldn't be like any followers. It wouldn't be any crazy stuff off the back of it.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting conversation to have, but it's not really like now necessarily, but like at the time I think it would have been an interesting conversation maybe to educate some people about how things actually do work and what you need to do.
That's what I tried to do, right?
Yeah.
That's all. I didn't go into like attack him. I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, just more to defend myself and be like, what do you mean I'm a meme, man? Like, I'm trying. I'm working really hard.
Do you bleed blue, Mac?
Huh?
Do you bleed blue?
In what way?
That's what he wrote in the...
I don't even know what that's.
The ESL talent crew who bleeds so blue or something like that. Right. It was just like very dramatic language.
Yeah.
And obviously for those that are not in the know, that is where the Ivory Tower meme actually came from. So anytime the Ivory Tower gets brought up, it's from that.
Yeah.
And I like the Ivory Tower. Like I like that meme. I think it's such a funny fucking meme.
Yeah.
Because if only people knew, man. Like if only people knew what it was really like in the Ivory Tower.
Yeah.
Look at this beautiful white wall that we have. It's just, man, fantastic. What a setup.
What's this? You
Some sort of scuff marks.
What'd you do, man?
There's a scuff mark here. There's a scuff mark here.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, it's good life sometimes.
But yeah, that was a whole thing. I think the best thing about that was just like I saw so many people like defending me.
Yeah.
And that like made me feel better. I was just like, cool. It's like literally one negative comment to like however many 100 fucking positive comments and shit. And I was like,
sometimes people just have an issue with you, and
it's not everyone's opinion.
It's
just this one guy's opinion,
right?
Which he's entitled to it, even if it's fucking wrong.
Yep.
Like I'll just tell him why it's wrong.
Yep. Anyway, we'll jump on. CS in 2021, just more of the same. Like I don't think there was really anything of note necessarily. Like we were doing a lot of those online shows. We're doing a lot of those remote broadcasts still. No IEMs, no LANs, no live events, no traveling overseas, nothing like that. So nothing really to sort of touch on as far as CS is concerned. But 2021, I feel like is kind of where you started to really pick up Valorant, obviously, which is now started to become a bit more of a thing.
2020 or 2021?
I think it came out in 2020, but like there wasn't too many shows until 2021.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to know like what was your initial thoughts on like getting into Valorant, and were you trying specifically to be a Valorant caster? Because like everyone sort of was at that time. Just give me your take on Valorant at the time and what you thought about it as someone who had casting as a career?
I thought it was like sick. It was just another FPS game that interested me, and I thoroughly enjoyed like how the game played out, especially when it first came out. It was also easier to be good at it when you come from like all of the best people when the game came out were generally Counter Strike players because the game played the same. Mechanics were relatively similar. It was a little bit slower, but also faster in the way that how the abilities worked, and it was just more in depth. And like I was already a huge Counter Strike nerd. I love like thinking about all of the meta things, all of the different like ways that you can use utility and how the strategy all plays out. So going into a new game with new maps and new abilities, and it still being kind of like that hero shooter, so it's like a little bit Overwatchy, but more so like it's still Counter Strike. It's still Counter Strike, but everything's changed, and that's why I was like, "Whoa, this is so interesting!" Because I love learning. Like whenever I pick up a new game, my favorite thing is just like learning how to be good at the game, and not only for myself, but just how the game like plays out, right? And coming from a situation where commentators and there's a chance for that to be a competitively viable new esport, like that's like cool. Like you want to be at the top, so you grind and you try to take what you already know, take the experience you already have in the other game, and apply that to the new game. Like that's all I was really thinking was. Yeah.
How did you feel about everyone trying to get on to Valorant? Because it felt like it didn't matter where you came from, whether you were a CS caster, Overwatch, Rainbow Six, bloody Tier 2, Tier 1, didn't matter. Everyone was trying to get into Valorant at the time. Was that like... Because I've never seen anything like that. You know, like the last time that a really big game came out of that level, I think was Overwatch. And when Overwatch released, like, it was a little bit different back then,
The difference is it's a Riot game, and you already know what Riot's doing with League, how that's lasted for however long, one of, if not the biggest esport in the world at times when World is on and shit.
Definitely at times, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like one of the, like, you know that it's a publisher-backed game, which is the difference to CS. So if you manage to get in, you can like live a life as talent by just doing that game.
Yeah.
So obviously when CS isn't working for you to get out, and that being something as well, it's like cool. Like I'm not necessarily jumping ship, but you're like
exploring options.
Yeah, explore your options. Do multiple games. Like I feel like that's the other thing. We'd already had so many conversations about having to do multiple games. To survive as a talent in Australia, you need to do many things. And if Valorant was to be another good esport for Oceania, then just go for it.
Yeah, I think we have skipped over a couple of like the other games that you've dabbled in. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, next topic when we talk about League of Legends. But one thing that I'll actually just sort of quiz you on here was how do you feel about being a multi-title caster? Because like obviously at this point now in our careers, we've both done a lot of different titles, and even currently to this day are still kind of like taking work in different titles. And I find it very hard to like really specifically focus on one title and like in a way just become entrenched in that specifically only. So what would you like to be? Would you like to stay as a multi-title caster, or like if the opportunity came to just do one title, regardless of what it is, doesn't matter? Is that where you'd rather go? Like, do you think you'd get bored doing one game, or do you want to do multiple titles, or what?
I don't think I get bored doing one game.
You prefer to do one game only?
So much better if I could just do one game.
I think so too.
Just because it's not just about how you work as a talent and what you bring on the broadcast, but if you just do one game and you're able to not have this like chaos of every player that you need to learn from every team, from every game, which just every time you jump into a new title just goes, right? Like, ability names in Valorant, and then, the short foray into like League of Legends casting, trying to learn a couple of ability names rather than, or even just the keys that each ability's on for fucking 100 plus fucking champs. Like, that's the whole thing. But it's just, if I could, like, just looking at, say, I've recently worked with like the CS talent that just work on CS. Like they have worked every now and then on Valorant or like other games, but for the most part, like they
play CS, they watch CS, they consume CS,
breathe CS,
create content for CS, and that's it.
And I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, as a person that lives here in Australia, you can't do that. Like, you just can't do that. So yes, I would like to do just one game, but I need to. It's one of the things where you want the bit of security. You want a game that is going to invest back in you, So you need to have like the people that want you there and stuff. It's like Riot definitely is someone that could look after their talent, but you also hear like so many of those stories where like they haven't to like league casters historically. So it's just about, doing your best job and hoping that they want you on their product. And also like my style is versatile. I can do different things on different games. I can fill different roles, and I just need direction. So I just need, not even a TO, just,
Publisher or TO.
Or TO or whatever, just to say, hey, we want to work with you.
Yeah.
And we want you to do these things.
Yep.
And that's all I really need. As long as someone wants me to work with them and they don't just go, oh, we've got this guy. We don't know how he's going to fit in. That makes it harder.
One of the hard things is obviously not knowing where you're going to be. Like as far as next year, I haven't locked in any work next year. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so it's like, do you know if you're going to do CS next year? Do you know if you're going to do Valorant next year?
Yeah.
Are you going to be back on League of Legends next year? Are you going to be doing fucking who knows what? Honestly, and
even like towards the end of this year, it's
yeah,
kind of like
true, exactly.
Feeling real dry right now.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be a couple of like off-season Valorant tournaments, but I'm already hearing about clashes for those. So, and then we got like Rest of ANZ champs, which has been like a nice little send-off, and then moving into next year, you'll hope that we'll be on like Premiere because that got announced the other day for OS for ANZ.
ESL Challenger.
ESL Challenger. Sorry, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So that's something. And don't know if DreamHack's coming back. Don't
know if IM's coming back.
Don't know if IM's coming back. There's a lot of uncertainty.
IM falls in the calendar, but it didn't say it was in Australia.
Yep.
Yeah.
So. Oof.
Yes, that's the difficulty, and I guess that's life. Really, that's the life you lead. So, Anyway. Speaking of versatility, let's talk about League of Legends for a second, because 2021 was when you picked up League.
Yeah.
Interesting one, obviously, for you as someone who hadn't really had a lot of experience with League. I know you'd played a little bit of it, but it definitely wasn't like even close to a primary game for you. You had a big learning curve. And actually, before we talk about League, I kind of wanted to talk about how you actually even got to the point of being a host on LCO, a League of Legends show, because you had done a little bit of hosting, like you sort of picked up some Warcraft 3 shows here and there and stuff like that, and you were obviously a play-by-play caster, so that inherently meant that you had been hosting some of the broadcasts that you were on already prior to that point. So what was that like as far as how important was that kind of initial learning curve in actually securing you the LCO gig, do you think?
I think it was pretty good. Like most people had enjoyed my hosting. I think when I started hosting, the main person I'd looked to that had been like a dedicated desk host was fucking Danny.
Right.
And I loved his dumb skits and his his personality and stuff that he brought. So I definitely shaped a lot of what I was doing just off of that, because I was like, I really like that. And people, when I'd like watch Twitch chat or watch it live or whatever, people would all laugh and think it was actually like pretty decent. So I was like, well, I think that's like entertaining. And he also just jumps on whatever game he could. I remember like looking at the fight or flights or whatever, like those PUBGs.
Yeah.
I don't know how much he knew about PUBG, but he'd go in as a host. Yeah, not a lot. And he'd just go in and just do the same job, just be funny, ask questions that you're genuinely curious about and stuff. And that seemed to be the best way to do it. For Warcraft, like I think I was casting that with Pilly.
Yeah, you might have been casting. I can't remember, but I know that you were there as a talent for that.
It was me and Pilly, and then the guy, I can't remember his name, but he was like the Warcraft 3 guy in Australia.
Yeah.
And he was cool. So he knew everything. I did a little bit of research for like a couple of days beforehand on like actual meta strategies, because Warcraft 3 players, like most people that do RTS games, are big nerds. So they write everything down, call it strats, tell you how it works. So I was like finding these wiki pages on like what these strats were, how all the units worked, what they had to do, and how the build orders all needed to play out and stuff. So I was like learning that. Never really played too much RTS, but a big thing about jumping into any game for me is just learning, like, not for me, for anyone that works on a fucking broadcast, is learning terminology.
Yeah.
Like terminology for that title is super important to, at least if you don't understand the terminology, at least use the terms
like you belong there. Yeah.
correctly and sound like you can understand at least kind of what's going on, right? That's the minimum. Yep. And then like with Warcraft, I think it was me and Pilly, so we were like doing a little bit. Pilly's big StarCraft nerd, so he sort of knew it to an extent as how things worked, and we just like bounce around, whatever. I tried to play-by-play, and I'm like, play-by-play doesn't really work in RTS. Not the same as
same, no.
As in MOBAs or as in FPS games, for sure. But then, yeah, ended up going on the finals. I think overall, I seemed like the weakest probably of like the talent that was there for casting. So they're like, hey, do you want to like do the host for it? I'm like, fucking oath. Like,
Yeah, thank God. Get me out.
So then I was able to ask like questions I was genuinely curious about to the main Warcraft guy. It was Luke was there as well. I think I might have casted with Luke a few times, and then I knew Luke and Pilly like had an idea, but didn't know like direct
like,
questions to them. So
yeah.
no like super in depth questions.
But it was like learning about how to be a host.
Learning about how to be a host, like asking the talent that you're working around, like what you can ask them, what they feel comfortable talking about, knowing like how the desk should flow, doing something a bit fun.
Yeah.
Also, funnily enough, because that was when COVID was on, so like, and Classic had only been out for like a little while, but Warcraft 3, like learning about Warcraft 3 got me keen to play WoW. So I played a bit of WoW, and I was like, and like figuring out like who was who and where the story was going. And then I've never really cared too much about lore for games, but like that got me heaps into like Warcraft lore for a little bit. I was like, that's where this guy comes from. This is how this all works and stuff. So that was kind of cool. Then hosting off the back of that, yeah, I'd been speaking with Spawn. So like obviously I was with Order. Well, actually, if you guys don't know, I was with Order as a content creator kind of guy for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a contracted thing. It was like they'd send me some merch, and then I'd just like have their logo on the stream and stuff. And then I'd just be like, I'd talk with Spawn a lot. Spawn was essentially, if you don't know who Spawn is, he's a League of Legends talent that now is the coach of
Liquid,
main Liquid.
Yeah.
Like main Liquid, not just Academy anymore.
Yeah,
so
I'm pretty sure.
that's cool. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Where'd Jubes go? Jubes is CLG.
Which is now NRG.
Is it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That was, I haven't kept up too much with the LCS. But yeah, Spawn's great. He's really good talent. Also a great person to sort of look up to. And he was helping me a lot. When he took me out to lunch and was like, he wanted me to get involved with Order. So I did that. But then when League of Legends was doing its whole crazy thing in Australia and OPL was potentially like getting the can for when Skimmy came in as the new play-by-play.
Yeah.
So before Skimmy came, Spawn was talking to me. It's like, I really like your play-by-play. You should fucking come do League and come do OPL. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't know heaps about League, but I'll start like learning. Yeah. So I've been playing League for like a little bit of time, not like too in depth because mentally it's like a really hard game to fucking handle.
Yeah.
But like enough that I ended up being the host, right? But he asked me to try to like be a play-by-play so I could go and cast League of Legends with him, which would have been really cool. Never happened. And Skimmy got that spot. And then when Skimmy came in, there kind of wasn't space for me to like go there anyway. And then when it went to LCO, I think, general budgets all went down. They couldn't afford Nick Boy. Nick Boy is very expensive talent because he's a very good talent that's been there for a long, long time. And also, I think he like charges like industry TV rates, right, rather than like esports talent rates, which is there's a big gap there.
Yeah.
So then, once that rolled around, I hosted a few things. LCO popped up. I was like, oh yeah, I want to be on this or whatever. Reached out, I think, to Graham. I was like, I don't know who's in charge of this, but can you like say that I'm interested in actually doing this game?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I didn't know you like League. And I was like, well, I like watching it and stuff. Like, I don't know that much, but if I got a couple of weeks to grind really fucking hard to cast a game, like, I could cast a game, and it's all about experience, right?
Did you have to do a reel?
Yes.
Yeah. I had to do one as well. So obviously
on the same Legacy.
Yeah, the Legacy International game.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the circumstances was, but I think it was, at least for me, it was like we need to see a reel of your League of Legends casting.
Yeah.
And I was a bit like offended almost.
Yeah.
I was a bit like, really? Like
it was probably literally just to compare with what I could do.
Yeah.
On the same thing.
But I had heard that you were also like in talks for the casting role.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want this to sound really mean, but I was like, there's no fucking way. There's no fucking way Mac is a better League of Legends caster than me. Like, I'm sorry.
That's true.
Especially at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, mate, I've played like 10 years.
Yeah, this is your game. This
is my game.
Going back to your in retrospect.
People don't understand. I was a League of Legends kid before I was a CS kid.
Yeah.
So I played a lot of League, and I was like, man, if this fucking Mac guy takes a League of Legends casting job off me,
I'm
gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we did the thing, and I was like, whatever. And I was like, I'll do this cast, and like I'm obviously not a League of Legends caster naturally because I haven't done it in a long time, but I felt like fairly natural at it, and I sent it in, and I was like, whatever, and then it ended up being me casting and you hosting. I was like, okay, that I think in my head works out to make more sense anyway. Obviously, we go through that season of League of Legends, and I don't know what was it like for you, like learning the game, because I know that you had experience playing the game to an extent, but you were like bronze or silver going into that first season.
There's no getting out of that.
No, but like even then, like how many hours you'd put into, for example, like CS. You know, and knowing how to play CS and knowing about CS and understanding the game and stuff like that, it obviously must come quite naturally to you, having played so much. But I think with League of Legends, while that may be natural to me, you were getting the experience that I had with CS, where I had to like learn the game, learn the pro scene, learn how it worked in that sentiment. I remember playing a lot of League of Legends with you in season 1. We were playing heaps because like I was trying to grind to diamond because I was like, this is like, I'm casting League. I want to play League on stream and like do whatever, be good at it. So I got to diamond that season. I was pretty happy with that. But we were also like almost every night, everyone would jump on, like all the people, ESL crew, yourself, myself, we would be like playing 5-mans.
Yeah. It rekindled the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I remember that time very fondly. Just like the whole, like, because even for me, like I had been out of League of Legends for years at that point, so I knew I had to do a lot of skilling up as well. But especially for you, I want to know what it was like from your perspective learning that game, because as you said before, it's a game which has like a very high. I think it's a game which has a very high barrier to entry. Yeah. It's not like CS where you can go in and understand naturally what's happening on the screen. You need to know kind of what champions do, where they go, what their role is, how they're supposed to work in the team composition. Yeah. So what was it like kind of learning the game?
Well, it's
or relearning the game.
Like relearning, like I definitely learned a lot. I'm still learning, but there's just different. I understand the concepts, right? The concepts that exist when I'm thinking about Counter Strike. There's like you have different roles that are, when you're looking at the game, it's like they don't exist. But when you play the game and you understand it, you like, oh, this guy does this for that, and this is the way. Like this is the importance of this utility landing like here and stuff. So I have those concepts in my head. I'm like, okay, each ability in League of Legends has a thing that it's going to do, and like I had to just understand how that would work. And
what
the thing is, like the interactions, like what beats this, and like all the super nerdy stuff. And the thing is, because I love super nerdy stuff like that, I was super interested. Still am super interested. Just haven't had to host it for the last 6 months. But when I did start hosting, I'd be able to ask.
You can hear the dog's foot tapping.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, okay. And I'm pretty sure it goes through on the recording as well.
So if you guys can hear the tapping, it's Nox.
I'm scratching his nose real good.
You can maybe see, having a good scratch. So just going, nerding out on how all of that works, so that when I started hosting, the questions I was asking were genuine. It's like, oh, so what's going on? Like, why is this happening? And part of me is like, yeah, cool. There's going to be a certain amount of people in chat that are like diamond and decent or masters or whatever. And like, why the fuck's he asking that? But there's also going to be a lot of chat that are like, oh, cool. And if you ask the right question and you get Jubes or like Rusty giving you a full on well-spoken answer as to why these things happen and the reasoning behind like these rotations and stuff, then everyone's learning, or at least it's like content. It's full of content, and you just learn theory. And I feel like that's all. Like you can do the same in CS, right? And it's heaps easier when you have like pro players and stuff on the desk or in interviews, and you just want to say, oh, so like what's going down in like these rounds where you like you do this stuff, like why? And they'll tell you like the theory behind it and stuff. So I had like concepts of how broadcast should work and how. Or like what I wanted to say on the broadcast without having to say it and just getting other people to say it for me. So that's sort of how I came in. Also, I had to I didn't even when I didn't get the casting job for LCO, like it was like, oh, sorry, we're not going to go with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was just going to not be on it. And I was like, well, like what about hosting? Like I'm fucking down to host. Like I want to be involved because I also knew that like we were still in like COVID times, so work is work. And I'm happy to host. I'm like, I like League enough. Like I can host League. You know, if I can't cast League, I can definitely host it. And you're like, oh, I didn't know you'd want to do that. Yeah, we'll talk to people and see what we can do, whatever. And I think they were trying to get Froskuren as a host.
Right.
So something happened, and then she didn't end up being the host. And
Yeah, probably COVID related stuff
Yeah.
because it was still COVID lockdown during that time, and she was overseas. I remember.
yeah, I think they were also looking at Kitty as a host in that first season as well.
Would have been an interesting choice as a host. I think.
Especially with no experience.
Yeah.
And then that went like we got Kitty on eventually after because we had Nat as the interviewer for the first year.
Yeah, it was the first 12 months.
First 12 months, and then the second year was Kitty.
Kitty as the interviewer.
Yeah, because Nat blew up in Dota and
Yeah.
got to be old Dota. Go over to NA. NA? I think she went NA for DPC.
I think so. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't follow Dota really.
Yeah. I don't follow Dota, but I follow what Nat's doing.
Yeah.
Everyone I've worked with, I sort of like,
Keep an eye on it.
tabs on.
Yeah.
Oh, where are they? What are they doing? Oh,
Yeah.
fucking oath.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so then that happened. And then, as you mentioned, after the first year, you got knocked off. I almost got knocked off. I went through a very stressful period of being like, oh, shit, because like LCO pays good for the amount, because there's a lot of work on LCO, right? There's like a lot of show days. And then almost having that like ripped out from under you was, I'd say almost traumatic at that point. And that was also during that year, we did season 1 or split 1. Then the thing happened with my brother.
Yep.
And then they didn't, like, no one spoke to me. I think you said to me that.
I remember this. Yeah, this is where they were like not sure if you were going to do a show or something like that, and they asked me, could I host for like a couple of weeks or something. I was like, yeah, I mean, whatever needs to happen, I can obviously facilitate. But no one had actually asked you if you wanted to keep hosting.
No one
or
had
not.
reached out.
I was ready to go. Like, I was like, yeah, I've got these dates. Like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And then I think I messaged you, did I? And said, like, what's happening? Or
It was either you or me. Maybe I messaged you or I messaged
Pete, or I don't know.
Pete or someone. I was like, what's going on with LCO? Like, isn't it starting in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, this is what it was. It was like the first week of season 2 or something like that.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, we didn't know if like you'd be ready. And I'm like, yeah, man, I just want to get my fucking mind off this shit. Like, ASAP.
Yeah.
Got to work. And yeah, ended up getting back on for the second split, and it was all right. There was like a weird thing. So I ended up getting like a lot of feedback for LCO, but during like the first year, a lot of the feedback I think was pretty relevant. I think Pete's also very like direct with feedback, like not really soft with the feedback, and like that's all right. But like a lot of it is like I'll actually actively like ask for feedback like during weeks and stuff, right? And if I don't get any feedback, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing a good job. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then there's like this feedback session, and then it's like all this feedback. I'm like, why don't you tell me this shit? Bloody, while it was happening, I would have preferred that, etc. And then moving into the next year, I think when Laura came on as the producer, she was a bit more hands-on, and then was also there for like the meetings and stuff. And there were some points where sometimes some of the feedback would be for like things that ended up being actually production-ended things that caused confusion, or like stuff was going on, and then I'd get negative feedback. Oh, you don't really know what's going on or something, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then Laura would jump in and be like, oh, that might actually be our fault.
Yeah, they fucked up.
Yeah.
More than you.
So there was a points where I was like, cool, that's nice that exists. And that was also, I think, after we moved to the studio, because in 2022, sorry.
22 was when you started in the studio.
We started in the studio again, and that was really nice. But then having a run of show there to then not having a run of show at all was like, oh shit, this is confusing. Ended up getting a little laptop and having the run of show, which is super cool. Yeah. Better thing, just having it there.
That's what I've always done too, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just easier.
So that was a good move that kept the show on track, kept my brain, because my brain goes on tangents, which is sometimes a good thing as a host, sometimes a terrible thing as a host. But it ended up being all right in the end. And the other thing, I remember I got feedback at one point, which was like, you need to go watch Dash and go watch Shocks and see what they do. And like, I went and did that. Just like, okay, I'll go watch what the better League of Legends hosts in the world do.
Sure.
And it's like, well, they have fully, scripted
segments. Yeah.
Segments with
very different
analysts that are dedicated analysts that have points that they want to make and talk about.
3 hours writing those segments every week.
And the hosts will sit there, ask, like, say their bit, and then like ask a question, and then sit there for 5 minutes not having to say a word. Whereas LCO dynamics, full different. It's like couches. Everyone's involved. Casters that have just casted have to then
do the analysis.
Kitty also came on as a bit of an analyst after being the interviewer because she also was challenger. Don't know what she is at the moment, but it was really good.
She's good.
Had a good mind for the game and understood how things work. I think we over time we had to do a bit of work with Kitty on how to say her points.
Yeah.
And I think all of the talent really helped Kitty excel so much, especially through 2022. If you look at her first broadcast in comparison to what she's doing now,
for sure.
Fuck,
For
crazy
sure,
improvement.
for sure.
Crazy improvement. But yeah, so the main point, tangents again, sorry, is go watch Shocks, go watch Dash, see what they do, try and do a bit more of that. And I'm like, but we can't. So we need to find a way that I have to sit there and be a bit more of an analyst, which is hard when I'm not as smart
An analyst, yeah.
at League of Legends as everyone else. So just ask the right questions. And then we also had the issue of the way that the games played out as well. You'd have a lot of top-ended games. No one wants to talk about the games after they're done. So you'd have fucking Mammoth against Chiefs.
Oh, you'd have
Chiefs
the absolute smack.
whitewash
15-minute, yeah.
And then you'd still have to talk about you'd have so much time to fill because you'd have a big gap because it was hard start times.
Right.
And because of that, it's you need to fill for 30 minutes. It's all right, what do we do?
30 minutes worth of content in a 15-minute game.
That's why we started doing the fun stuff, the champion conundrums and all that sort of shit. But that was good. So we just had to come up with a different structure to the show because the show wasn't an LCS and the show wasn't a LEC,
Yeah, people don't expect that from LCO either, I think.
Yeah.
It has its own brand. What did you think about being a host versus being a caster? Because obviously initially, as you said, you sort of wanted to be a caster and then you ended up going into hosting. Did you ever think okay, I'm maybe going to get stuck hosting, or did you not like that? Or did you you obviously seemed to warm to the role. I felt you sort of made that role your own.
Yeah.
But initially.
I do it my own way as opposed to other people, I find. But I never thought I was going to get stuck there. There was a point, though, where it was really weird. If we jump ahead to Valorant Ascension, where I got the host role for that, which was...
People thought you were a host only. I remember this conversation. Yeah.
I was told, even with Alex, who used to play in... Was it Dreamscape with Splashkey and shit?
Oh, yeah.
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 So Alex is the host of Paper X now. I was talking to him. He's
Coach Paper X, not host.
Coach. Sorry, Coach Paper X. Words hard, even though it's my job. And he was like, "Oh, haven't you always been a host?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, I used to commentate your games when you were bloody playing for Dreamscape, my brother." Yeah. And he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
all right. Well, no, I swear you were the guy that's just always done this hosting, even for CS." And I was like, literally never hosted CS. What's going on? Why does everyone think I'm a host? It was weird. But it's a lot of the Riot guys there. I think they'd seen more of my LCO stuff than they had actually seen of CS stuff.
Yeah.
So they must have just been like, "Oh, this guy's a host. We'll just get him as a host."
Yeah.
And that was different experience. Anyway, we'll
get to that. Hey guys, just at the end of this video, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Jean, who is my first supporter on buymeacoffee.com. If you'd also like to support me financially or any of my content, make sure to check out the link. It is in the description box below.